Smiling Sammy McCarthy, featherweight champion of Great Britain in 1954. He was the first ever boxer and the youngest ever guest on the classic British TV show This Is Your Life.
The six sisters of Sammy McCarthy.
He became an armed robber and served 3 prison sentences after retiring from boxing.
Wherever I got, I deserved. I know that anyway. We get robberies almost 2 or 3 times a week. Heavy robberies, eh, with me?
Heavy robberies, yeah.
Yeah, like going into the bank, out of the bank.
Oh, so you actually did banks too?
Yeah, oh yeah.
How did you rob a bank?
Well, you see someone take a load of money in,
yeah,
like generally a security guard.
And Sammy was actually one of the nicest people you could ever meet. A beautifully natured person, impeccable manners, and always described as the nicest man in boxing. Anyone that ever met him will attest to that. He was actually such a wonderfully natured person. And as his nickname suggests, he was obviously always smiling and always happy. Before I start, I'd just like to say a big thank you to boxer Jimmy Flint. I'm going to put a link in the description to Jimmy's channel because Jimmy did a brilliant interview with Sammy, and I'm going to use a couple of small clips from it, but I will put links to the full video in the description. So if you want to watch the full interview with Sammy on Jimmy's channel, then just go into the description box and you'll be able to watch that. But thank you, Jimmy, I really appreciate that, and it shows Sammy's wonderful character. So Sammy McCarthy was born in Stepney on the 5th of September in 1931, one of 10 children. He had 6 sisters. He worked on the fruit and veg barrow with his dad, pushing the barrow around London as a young child. And then he joined the St George's Gym in Stepney. He actually had a very, very successful amateur career. He had 90 fights, winning 83 of those 90, so really good amateur.
My father took me to Stepney St George's, and the trainer there, his name was Johnny Mann, who was a great amateur and professional boxer. Yeah. And of course I still love it. Yeah, that's right.
And did you win the ABAs?
No. In fact, in the senior ABAs, that's all I wanted to win. The junior ABAs, I got beaten in the semi-finals, but in the senior ABAs, which was even more prestigious than the juniors, I beat my very first fight. But the guy who beat me, excellent fighter, well, his name is Roddy Hinson, and the guy who beat me, he won the ABAs, you know.
Oh, okay.
And just after that, I turned professional.
How old was you when you went professional?
19.
Sammy turned professional in 1951 at the age of 19, exactly the same era as Sugar Ray Robinson and Rocky Marciano. Got up to 20 wins with just 1 draw in his first 18 months of boxing, and within 2 years, just over 2 years, he'd won 28 fights unbeaten. He'd beaten notable fighters including Jackie Turpin, Ronnie Clayton and Freddie King. His first defeat came against Hogan Kid Bassett. This was on points at the Royal Albert Hall. He then lost another fight to Ray Famechon, so that was 2 losses in a row, and then he lost a further fight before he went on to challenge unsuccessfully for the European title against Jean Snayers.
At Haringey, 22-year-old Sammy McCarthy from Stepney meets Jean Snayers.
Gene Snares.
And where did Gene Snares go
He came from Belgium.
Belgium, okay. Did he box for the world title?
No, but funny, I think at different times, I think.
Yeah.
At different times, he was flyweight champion, bantamweight champion and featherweight champion of Europe.
So he was a good fighter?
Good fighter, was he? Yeah.
He lost that one on points. So he'd lost 3 in a row at that point. So after those 3 losses, he actually went on and won the British featherweight title against Ronnie Clayton. This was via a stoppage in the 8th round with eye damage to Ronnie Clayton. And I think Clayton had held the title for many years. So it was a great victory for Sammy to become the British featherweight champion. Sammy then won his next 4 fights before losing the British title to Billy Spider Kelly. Sammy continued to box. He went on to fight once more for the British title, this time at lightweight, and he lost on points to Joe Lucy. And Sammy carried on boxing, and he ended his career with a record of 44 wins, 8 losses and 1 draw. So after retiring from boxing, Sammy was married and he had 2 children. He bought a pub called the Prince of Wales in Stepney. The thing is with the pub, he didn't really like the fact that he felt like he was always on duty, because he liked to spend a bit of time with his family and he liked to relax a bit. He didn't want to constantly be working. And it was in the pub that he overheard some men talking about armed robberies that they were planning on doing, which sort of gave a fascination to Sammy at that time.
So we saw the jump up, so no, it's
he called it a name, the dragon. Dragging.
I said, what's that? He said, dragging. I said, no, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, you know, the jump up. I said, I'm none the wiser. And then when he explained to me, I went, oh, that must be interesting. Go. I said, what do you do? I said, there and where else? And he said, would you like to come with us one day? I said, oh, I'd love to come, yeah. And he said, oh, so I'll meet tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. And we said to drive at the West End, and they did point out certain places for me, and it was more exciting, something entirely new.
A fascination that would lead him to end up committing the robberies, something which he was never proud of, something that he's always regretted because it sent his life down the wrong path, ended up with 3 prison sentences of 3 year, 6 year and a 14 year.
And I should be more than ashamed of myself because no one had more opportunities than I had.
You had it all, yeah.
Yeah.
And when he would do some of the robberies, they would put rice in the guns instead of bullets, so they still made a noise, but nobody would get hurt, because one thing Sammy didn't like was scaring people or hurting people.
Oh, frightening.
They run away.
It used to frighten me. I had to jump before they did. And I'm not proud of that because.
And what was that for? What was that for?
Whilst in prison, Sammy was in there with a lot of the criminal elite, especially from London, and he became good friends with Eddie Richardson and a lot of the other top criminals. Sammy was loved by everybody, and he did reform himself. He regretted all the crime and the robberies, and he turned his back on it after the prison sentences. So Sammy sadly passed away in 2020 at the age of 88. Now, 2 of my oldest and best friends, Craig Hamilton and Danny Hamilton, are related to Sammy. Craig's always spoke to me about Sammy, and Craig and Danny are both, like Sammy, very good fighters. Craig's a good boxer and a good street fighter.
Come on, step, hook out left. Step it up, Carl, step it up. That's it, good shot.
Danny's more of a street fighter, but they're both willing to fight much bigger men. They've both been attacked by gangs, and they've fought against gangs, and both very, very game fighters. So I've been friends with these two since I was 8 years old. I was lucky enough to meet Sammy at Joey Pyle's funeral, and I went over to say hello to Eddie, I think Eddie Richardson, and he was with Sammy, and Eddie introduced me to Sammy, and I was struck by how nice he was, and what a good nature that he had. He's just such a lovely natured person. So I was really lucky to have met him. And in 2020, just before lockdown, Sammy's funeral was in London. So myself, Craig Hamilton, John Griffiths, my good mate, and my friend Mark Bates, we all went down there to show our respect for Sammy, and it was a great turnout and a great service. Eddie Richardson was there, obviously, and a lot of the other chaps there to pay their respects to Sammy. Now, before I leave you with something that Sammy once said, I just want to say thank you to everybody. I appreciate all your support, all the likes, comments, shares, and the subscriptions. It means the world to me, so thank you very much. So once somebody asked Sammy how he acquired the nickname Smiling Sammy McCarthy. So Sammy replied it was initially to cover up his nerves. It was a nervous smile. He went on to say, even on my lowest day, I think it's wonderful to be alive. I'm just happy to be here.